Hey guys, and welcome back to A Dash of Prose. If you're familiar with this channel, you know that we discuss topics related to literature in these videos. When someone says literature, you often think of big, old books written by famous authors. Well, then you are in for a surprise because as I recently discovered, you can come across top class literature in unexpected places. What if I told you about a beautiful story I came across in the message board on Reddit written by an unknown author? I absolutely adore the comic book Calvin and Hobbes and have devoured every book in the series. After a run of 10 years and featuring in over 2,400 newspapers worldwide, at the height of its popularity in 1995, the author and illustrator of Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson, called it quits. The cartoonist is famously reclusive and has avoided any media appearances. He has also refused to part with television, movie, or even merchandising rights to the comic strip, declining offers worth millions of dollars. The fans of Calvin and Hobbes, of course, continue to look forward to new material, and some have even created what is called fan fiction, extending the story of Calvin and his beloved pet tiger. Redditor Samurai Tiger 19 has gifted us with one such story in a post titled, "In the final minutes of his life, Calvin has one last talk with Hobbes." It's a moving and beautifully written short story, and I have left the link to the original Reddit post in the description down below. Through this video, I would like to thank the original author, Samurai Tiger 19, and of course Bill Watterson himself. I will now read the story, and I'm sure you will agree that it qualifies as quality literature. Calvin? Calvin, sweetheart? In the darkness, Calvin heard the sound of Susie, his wife of 53 years. Calvin struggled to open his eyes. God, he was so tired and it took so much strength. Slowly, light replaced the darkness and soon vision followed. At the foot of his bed stood his wife. Calvin wet his dry lips and spoke hoarsely. Did you find him? Yes, dear, Susie said, smiling sadly. He was in the attic. Susie reached into her big purse and brought out a soft, old, orange tiger doll. Calvin could not help but laugh. It had been so long. Too long. I washed him for you, Susie said, her voice cracking a little as she laid the stuffed tiger next to her husband. Thank you, Susie, Calvin said. Few moments passed as Calvin just laid on his hospital bed, his head turned to the side, staring at the old toy with nostalgia. Dear, Calvin said finally, would you mind leaving me alone with Hobbes for a while? I would like to catch up with him. All right, Susie said. I'll get something to eat in the cafeteria. I'll be back soon. Susie kissed her husband on the forehead and turned to leave. With sudden but gentle strength, Calvin stopped her. Lovingly, he pulled his wife in and gave her a passionate kiss on the lips. I love you, he said. And I love you too, said Susie. Susie turned and left. Calvin saw tears streaming from her face as she went out the door. Calvin then turned to face his oldest and dearest friend. Hello, Hobbes. It's been a long time, hasn't it, old pal? Hobbes was no longer a stuffed doll, but the big furry old tiger Calvin had always remembered. It sure has, Calvin, said Hobbes. You haven't changed a bit, Calvin smiled. You've changed a lot, Hobbes said sadly. Calvin laughed. Really? I haven't noticed at all. There was a long pause. The sound of a clock ticking away the seconds rang throughout the sterile hospital room. So, you married Susie Durkins, Hobbes said, finally smiling. I knew you always liked her, Calvin said, his smile bigger than ever. Tell me everything I missed. I'd love to hear what you've been up to, Hobbes said, excited. And so Calvin told him everything. He told him about how he and Susie fell in love in high school and had married after graduating from college, about his 3 kids and 4 grandkids, how he turned Spaceman Spiff into one of the most popular sci-fi novels of the decade, and so on. After he told Hobbes all this, there was another pregnant pause. You know, I visited you in the attic a bunch of times, Calvin said. I know, but I couldn't see you. All I saw was a stuffed animal. Calvin's voice was breaking and tears of regret started welling up in his eyes. You grew up, old buddy, said Hobbes. He broke down and sobbed, hugging his best friend. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I broke my promise. I promised I wouldn't grow up and that we'd be together forever. Hobbes stroked the Calvin's hair, or what little was left of it. But you didn't. What do you mean? We were always together, in our dreams. We were? We were. Hobbes? Yeah, old buddy. I'm so glad I got to see you like this. One last time. Me too, Calvin. Me too. Sweetheart? Susie's voice came from outside the door. Yes, dear, Calvin replied. Can I come in? Susie asked. Just a minute. Calvin turned to face Hobbes one last time. Goodbye, Hobbes. Thanks for everything. No, thank you, Calvin, Hobbes said. Calvin turned back to the door and said, You can come in now. Susie came in and said, Look who's come to visit you. Calvin's children and grandchildren followed Susie into Calvin's room. The youngest grandchild ran past the rest of them and hugged Calvin in a hard, excited hug. Grandpa, screamed the child in delight. Francis, cried Calvin's daughter, be gentle with your grandfather. Calvin's daughter turned to her dad. I'm sorry, Dad. Francis never seems to behave these days. He just runs around making a mess and coming up with strange stories. Calvin laughed and said, Well now, that sounds just like me when I was his age. Calvin and his family chatted some more until a nurse said, Sorry, but visiting hours are almost up. Calvin's beloved family said goodbye and promised to visit tomorrow. As they turned to leave, Calvin said, Francis, come here for a second. Francis came over to his grandfather's side. What is it, Gramps? Calvin reached over to the stuffed tiger on his bedside and held him out shakily to his grandson, who looked exactly as he did so many years ago. This is Hobbes. He was my best friend when I was your age. I want you to have him. He's just a stuffed tiger, Francis said, eyebrows raised. Calvin laughed. Well, let me tell you a secret. Francis leaned closer to Calvin. Calvin whispered, If you catch him in a tiger trap using a tuna sandwich as bait, he will turn into a real tiger. Francis grasped and delighted awe. Calvin continued, Not only that, he will be your best friend forever. Wow, thanks, Grandpa, Francis said, hugging his grandpa tightly again. Francis, we need to go now, Calvin's daughter called. Okay, Francis shouted back. Take good care of him, Calvin said. I will, Francis said before running off after the rest of the family. Calvin laid on his back and stared at the ceiling. The time to go was close. He could feel it in his soul. Calvin tried to remember a quote he read in a book once. It says something about death being the next great adventure or something like that. His eyelids grew heavy and his breathing slowed. As he went deeper into his final sleep, he heard Hobbes, as if he was right next to him on his bedside. I'll take care of him, Calvin. Calvin took his first step forward and one more adventure and breathed his last grin with a smile on his face. So, what do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you liked the video, share it with your friends who are also fans of Calvin and Hobbes. Subscribe down below for more such videos and I'll see you guys in the next one.